thereby jobs. Jobs, good morning. Let's go ahead with contribution.
Yeah, many things. I think you are correct to say corruption is everywhere. But there's only one authority, which is our government, which have got that mandate to fight corruption. The biggest problem why corruption is always increasing is even the laws which are enacted are corrupt. We can see like even the notice which was put and withdrawn yesterday, that one which was withdrawn yesterday. It's something which encourage corruption. The way our tenders are issued and they deliver nothing, like those tenders to buy Zupcos. Over $1 billion was spent, but those buses were never bought because we did not go into tenders where there are checks and balances. And the way how the Anti-Corruption Commission is conducting its duties is either catch and release or there's no evidence. Then that is the end of story. So that is the reason why we blame the government. We know that there is a lot of corruption going on in the local authority. They are renting lots of properties at less price. Even in Blawayo, they got mayors, they got farms which he is renting. If you go to those documents, they examine them to see how much is he paying for those farms. We know that we are losing a lot of money which could be developing our beautiful city. In Ichirezi, where I come from, you find out to say even the councillors, though they were Zanu PF councillors, a combine of them, Zanu PF chairman and other councillors from the opposition MPC, they did loot a lot of stands, but nothing happened because they have got, the laws allowed them to buy stands at 25%. But that way, the 25% of the cost, we don't know whether it's for market price or for their own price for the local authority, because we have that difference on the market. Say, the council can sell it at a certain price, which is less than the market. When they just put it at 25%, we don't even understand what it is. So our laws themselves, they allow that corruption to go. Then if we compare to say there's sanction, it's like the government is just using that sanction mantra to loot. The biggest example is when they banned the trade of lithium ore and then exempt Zimbabwe defense industry to say, it's the only entity which is going to trade in lithium ore. Why did they know that it's sanctioned? Because they wanted to hide something. If anything went wrong, because they would just use that sanction mantra to say we could do APC because our entity which we exempt is sanctioned. They know what they are doing. Those people, the sanction mantra is something which is used when it suits the government, and they don't use it when it doesn't suit them. Because recently, even the president, when he was going to UK for coordination, he was saying there's nothing to talk about sanction. And even Zanu PF itself, we said we can work around those sanctions because they understand it to say it's not for the whole nation, it's for a few individuals and different entities. So we have to, when we talk about corruption, it has spread very wide to say they started from the police itself to say how corrupt are they and what is being done to end that corruption. You will find out to say there's nothing really, because it seems now it has spread from the lowest police officer in the street up to the highest police officer at the police general headquarters. We didn't know until he was removed from power that he was corrupt, mining the police mining entity and pocketing all the proceedings, which is very bad. And the way how some police officer would end up disclosing to say when we do corruption, we are sharing the proceeds with those ones who are in charge. It's quite surprising as well. So the issue of corruption, it has now spread like a cancer, and we are affected, whether the villagers in the rural areas are now being affected, because if their only fields can be given to Chinese to mine, if they suspect there's something, then traders are going to come and just trade off and take whatever they want to take without asking, because those ones who have the authority to give them that permission, they can give them if those Chinese can pay enough bribe. So we no longer have protection because of this corruption. That is what we have to understand.
have just joined us on this morning on a cycle, today we are talking about Zimbabwe's problems to say, is it sanctions or corruption? Where are we going wrong? I see we have been joined by Amai Boy. Good morning, Amai Boy. What's your contribution this morning?
Good morning, Side. Good morning, good people. Very interesting conversation. Thank you for the opportunity to make my contribution. I think you can't put a blanket to say those two are the problem in Zimbabwe, because there's multiple problems in Zimbabwe, and I am assuming we're talking about the economy. What would give us livelihood, which we would say it's comfortable. People can have a living income without strife and with some guaranteed certainty, at least for 5 years. I'm going to pay my rent on this place. I'm not going to get surprise increases and all that. So it's a series of issues that we're faced with. A lot of times, I think, in these conversations, we need to do a proper definition of what sanctions are and where they are. I'm imploring my colleagues at site to actually run such a session. I think it will be very helpful to educate us, because there's various kinds of sanctions. Europe, for example, has not got any sanctions on Zimbabwe except for the military and a few individuals. Now, those people that understand the military in any state, you know how it contributes to any economy, from staffing to even industry. And Zimbabwe defense industries is specifically sanctions. Now imagine putting Lockheed Martin on sanctions to say you can't sell your arms to any country in the world, or better still, you can't even get any raw materials, you can't even do any business. Even the uniform of the Air Force was affected by sanctions, because the material was procured prior to sanctions, was only procured in the United Kingdom, for those of you that didn't know, and we had to procure through Zambia. And then they were like, your quantities are too much, you must be procuring for Zimbabwe, and then it stopped. So there's a lot of things that we need to define. And then we come to the financial instruments that even get countries that do trade or move funds into Zimbabwe through the instruments that are blocked. So there's various sanctions. And of course, there's targeted sanctions on various people, individuals. And we know that, I must not assume that we do know, but some of us may know that the original sanction list was drafted by the aggrieved Rhodesians, and anybody that had ticked them off was on that list, and people had to actually challenge the United States to say, why have you put me, and then that sort of thing on the targeted. But there were institutional sanctions as well, and we saw in 2016 the removal of sanctions, and I think it went through completely in 2020, if I'm not mistaken, on specific institutions. So to say Zimbabwe does not have sanctions, I think we need to define which sanctions we're talking about, and then we can agree on that. Corruption, somebody rightly pointed out, corruption is across the board. Even here, we've seen what happened with COVID procurement. In the United Kingdom, if you're a friend of the top echelons of power, you get contracts in a due process, and nothing really happens to you. So corruption is also a contributing factor. But the biggest thing that we do not address, everybody knows Zimbabwe's got a wealth of minerals, everybody. And yet, we do not address the pilferage that is a century old. You hardly ever hear anybody challenging the revenue declarations by the likes of Zimplats or any Anglo-American entities, and they win all their court cases when they challenged, like the gold smuggling cases, metal and gold, the Caledonia, and all sorts. They win their court cases on allegation of pilferage. And yet we declare that we have resources. But how many of us understand how much pilferage is actually happening with all those resources we claim to have as a state? Do we really understand who actually holds the wealth of Zimbabwe? It is not a Zimbabwean. It is still the Western firms and individuals. If you look up until recently, the biggest extractive industry leaders in Zimbabwean economic space were United Kingdom, United States, and China was third for a long time. I think China's only surpassed those two in the past few years. But for the longest while, it was proper colonial business as usual. And to a large extent, it still is. When we look at our neighbors, South Africa, and the problems that they have with the economy and the constant threat that they're given by the Western government, it's just around we'll do a Zimbabwe on you. And if you also again look at who holds the sway, the financial sway, so you can talk of corruption, you can talk of sanctions, but who's actually holding the economy of former colonies across the globe? Now, we come to governance. Somebody, I think it was Dobbs, if I'm not mistaken, who touched on the laws. And that is a fundamental big problem in Zimbabwe. We have laws that allow that to happen. Even if you look at the gold mafia documentary, one would have hoped if you're going to allege smuggling, show exactly where it is happening, not political innuendos that it was laced with. Now, I'm not exonerating anybody, but the fact of the matter is that the evidence was not presented, but there is so much of it on the ground. It would have been even better if we'd been shown how Makorokozas are disadvantaged by the moguls. And the moguls are not just the names that were thrown around there. The law supports, the law is old. It has had amendments, but the amendments are not in the interest of the majority. The only minerals that have come post-independence, though there's an argument that they were being extracted without declaration, is diamond, and then we've got the platinum, the huge craze. It was post-independence, and then you've got your lithium, which is of recent years. If you look at what can we do with lithium, the power lies outside of Zimbabwe. The power of using and making value, getting a value out of lithium. The regulatory framework doesn't lie with people that have the lithium. It lies with people that have the pockets. Now, people talk of China abusing our resources and corruption and bribing. They don't even need to bribe. The laws that are there, the land, the communal lands where the majority of the voters are, the people that live there do not have full property rights. The law gives power ultimately to the president. Now, that's a bad law. The individuals, the citizens are not empowered. That is a terrible law. We think it's okay. We think the Sabuku, the chief, and the RDC are in charge. But right now, there's a craze of land barons going across the country, taking rural district land, knowing that very soon there's going to be title because this debate is raging. So is that corruption? Is that bad laws? Is that sanctions? I mean, we need to address things in specificity because I think it's a motive we know what sanctions are a result of. We know it's nothing to do with human rights. Otherwise, Nigeria and other places would have been shut by now. We know that there was an easing of the impact of sanctions during the dollarization era, but we saw things come to a standstill because of sanctions between 2003 and 2007. People would actually have money and not have anything to buy, and importing from the South Africa or anywhere in the world was just a pain. We saw fuel companies pull out of Zimbabwe. In a way, it was advantageous for those that are of an entrepreneurial mindset. If you look at how many companies were registered with the deeds office in 1995, 96, 97, compare that to now, and look at the revenues. There's an increase, there's economic growth, but the majority were not participating. So there's a lot of things that are a problem in Zimbabwe's economic sphere. But are we addressing it even in this space? Hell no, we are not. We're not even agreeing on the definition of sanctions and on the sanctions that exist. And I can appreciate people when they've not been affected. I got affected by sanctions when I tried to purchase mere antivirus software. The sale of antivirus software. You try to procure security software. Zimbabwe, any company that is listed as a public company. You could buy from a private company. So by the time you buy from a private company, it directs you to Middle East, or it directs you if it's got an office in South Africa. So we are not even agreeing on what sanctions are. And we're not looking at the same sanctions when we're having these conversations. So I think there's several problems, and one of the major problems is our information dissemination. And I'd like to implore the likes of SITE. You know, we've had so many allegations laid against you and Open Pali that you are recipients of Western funds and all that. But you are also among the best platforms of informing and educating. Now, it's not untrue that you have received funds from U.S. government, but what organization? Well, actually, it's rather rude of you to.
Yeah, I know. Finals and my boy don't chat each other. My boy, please just finish off. Actually, it's now 9:30, and we still have other speakers as well.
Okay, so I'll wrap up saying, you have done, even though you're perceived to be an enemy of the state, you have done a better job at allowing divergent views to be aired and shared. But it's not untrue that you receive funding from the West. So sometimes your views, when you do an opinion piece, are skewed towards the support of those that actually are crippling. But Zimbabwe or any other colony has no power. The power lies in the West, people. The power lies with Russia. The power lies with China. So you have to dance to their tune, and then you will then start addressing the actual problems that Africa as a whole is faced with, not this nonsense.
Thank you so much, Amai Boy, for your contribution this morning. Guys, we have run out of our time, so please be brief so that all those who have already accepted the mic will speak.
Our next speaker is who's the last speaker? Councillor Mpumelelo is our next speaker. Please do go ahead with the contribution. Please stick to 2 minutes so that we can allow others to speak as well.
Hello, yes, good morning. Thank you very much. Okay, I would like to point out two very critical things that I think are of importance. First, I would like to point out on the proclamation of the election date. If you see, maybe take countries like Kenya, already they are going to be having elections, say in the next 5 years, in the next coming 5 years, but already they have got election dates that have been set. But in Zimbabwe, you see, it's like a guesswork, it's like a chess game. No one is certain what's happening. So ours, actually, I think it's a man-made crisis where we are, our environment is very uncertain, and we have got policies inconsistent. We are scaring away investors, and coupled with the corruption coming from the regime itself, the ZANU-PF regime, the ZANU-PF government that is failing, that is clueless, that is monopolizing everything, even the election date. So, and it goes telling people that it is the army, is the police, is the law, is everything. Then secondly, look at the police that they created 3 days back, where they said they want to procure hospital facilities without being accountable to everyone. Now they are changing again. So that's why I said it's man-made and is coupled with the gross incompetence plus corruption. Our crisis is very sad, and it needs people not to be blaming the non-players. I've heard some speakers who want to point out that maybe also the opposition is to blame. How can you blame someone who's not participating in any way, someone who's not in that game, who's not playing the match, and you want to blame them? Let's point the truth, let's tell the truth, let everyone speak with one voice that in Zimbabwe we are failed by this ZANU-PF regime that is taking people for granted, that is doing as it pleases, and no one is putting it to account. So it's very saddening situation. We are supposed to tell the truth. Then look again. Now we have got in Zimbabwe, someone is already purchasing a Rolls-Royce car manufactured in 2023. Someone, they don't have any industry that they can point out to that maybe I'm striving my CY on Econet. At least someone who today we don't have electricity, they squandered the money for electricity and nothing happened to them. Then you have a situation where someone then goes and blame the opposition instead of blaming the regime itself that is not prosecuting even someone who squandered this money, and now we are in total blackout as a country. And unfortunately, when we cannot then have electricity, we can then not produce anything. It means that ours will be a cycle of poverty, a cycle of no jobs, a cycle where the country is not progressing in any way. Because if you don't have electricity, you wouldn't even expect that the country can move forward. For now, I'll stop here to allow others, since you gave me 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Councillor Mpume, for that contribution this morning. I see we have just joined by Skolo Maduna. Please do go ahead and say with the contribution as well.
I Brighton and Nonchalant. I'll just try to be short and quick because I'm also running out of time on my side. There is a previous speaker by Amai Boy. I like the way he confronted SITE to say SITE did received funds from wherever she was talking about. But I think as Zimbabweans, we like people like her to confront ZANU-PF for us. Because if she's got guts to come and tell SITE to say you did this and this, and you are in collaboration with the colonizers and stuff in those powerhouses of the world, can she do that towards ZANU-PF for us, please? Because it seems like as Zimbabwe, we need people like her who can help us confront ZANU-PF. Because Zimbabweans as a whole, all of Zimbabweans seem like we've failed to confront ZANU-PF and hold them accountable for what they've done to our country. And the only thing that we're left with to do is to join them. Because everyone in Zimbabwe is hungry. And if you want to deal with your hunger and your starvation, you have to join the people who are looting. And the people who are looting are ZANU-PF people. So, the only person we need in Zimbabwe, we only need one person who will stand on top of a mountain or whatever and confront the wrongdoers in Zimbabwe. Thank you, guys.
Well, thanks so much, Skolo, for that contribution this morning. Finding, I see you example to go ahead finding with the contribution as well.
No, thank you so much. No, I just want to respond to some things that were said and just have my view. Corruption is a problem, and it's the biggest problem, I think. But in Zimbabwe specifically, the government and that liberation movement needs to be removed, as in yesterday. Same with South Africa. Also, the ANC in South Africa is saying the same thing as some people are saying about um, corruption. They want to externalize it. They want to say, no, a party is not corrupt. People are corrupt. Therefore, everyone in society is corrupt. CCC is corrupt because, I don't know, because they're people. But I don't know, the logic stops making sense to a point because it makes a tiny bit of sense, but overall the point is mute because absolute power corrupts absolutely. And Zanu PF has had absolute power. This is what absolute power does to people. And that's why it's important to have a system which reflects what the citizens want on a more regular basis. And that's why democracy is a very good thing for society in general. It does have bad aspects to it, but in general, it's a very good thing. So, and some people just, they keep on talking about the West and all these other talking points. Mara, you shouldn't care who gives you the money. You must just care about whether you representing your citizens or not. The truth is, say with South Africa, I don't know what the trade is with Zimbabwe because I don't even know if they put out that data. Zimbabwean data on economic data, on trade data is very sketchy. So when it comes to South Africa, I'll talk about South Africa. South Africa, its biggest trading partners are the West. So what? We must sell ourselves to BRICS and all these other people who give us nothing, who we import too much from them. That makes no sense. So just being sold to the West, I will smile. You must be sold to the West if the West is building you. It's about building. Don't come with this whole political jargon of the West, the East, this and that. Is the US building Zimbabwe or not? And if it is, then we support it if it is. But this thing of saying that Zanu PF are good guys, they're just a little bit corrupt, that's what but we must forgive them and they must whatever. That doesn't make sense. You must remove them. All liberation movements in Africa need to be removed because they are not able to govern Africa and they do not represent African people. They must be removed. That's just plain and simple. And it is corruption. Sanctions is just used as a by the way thing. Sure, sanctions are a problem. I'm not saying they're not a problem. They're a problem. And sanctions must you can't make we mustn't be forced to make enemies because the West tells us that these are our enemies. Therefore, the US must realize that their own president vetoed the sanctions on South Africa when there was apartheid. And we don't forget those things. This is history. So the West has been complicit, but the idea that like our liberation movements are just suffering because of imperialism is just, it doesn't even pass the sniff test. Let's just be honest about the situation. And anyone who thinks that ZANU PF must stay in power and is doing good things, I don't know what I don't know. They need an intervention. We need to meet with them. We need psychologists. We need psychiatrists. Because how can you come to this stage in your life and think that these liberation movements that have destroyed African countries, destroyed people who have had so much potential, it just doesn't make sense. You shouldn't be. You must just come right. We'll pray for you. You're misleading our people, and we'll teach you. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much, Finding, for that contribution this morning. It's nice to have someone coming from different countries. They're sharing also their thoughts around this topic that we're talking about this morning. Unfortunately, guys, we have run out of time. We spoke about this issues. We're going to need to extend our time, but unfortunately, our boss is able to communicate with us. So say,
Can I just respond to something, please, host?
Yeah. Come to you. there are more people who are queuing to speak. I haven't given the mic, so I'm going to end the space now because the other show is coming through right now at the studio right now. So if I give you the mic, I would need to give other speakers who have the mic again to speak.
No. It was just to respond to what was said with regards to site. I feel that cannot be left unanswered. First and foremost, when we talk of corruption, what you see with corruption is where there's no transparency, there's no accountability. Receiving funds from West does not make anyone corrupt. It's the same thing as food aid. Does it not come from the West? So I feel when people are coming here to say that, to insinuate that site is corrupt, please allow us the space so that we can rectify that, because that is, we will not welcome such speech. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Professor Rani, for that contribution. Thanks so much, guys, for joining us this morning. Thanks so much for engaging us this morning. Please do follow us on Twitter at SideZW, and to follow our programs on Facebook as well, and to go to YouTube to subscribe to our programs as well. Guys, I'm sorry for taking the mic away from you. Bento, I see you are there. Say, I see you. You also want to speak. You want to speak as well, but unfortunately, you're running out of time. Our studios, something's coming up also for recording. So yeah, guys, let's join again tomorrow, 8:30 to 9:30. For myself, Brighton,
In North Shamapigwa,
it's
bye
fine
for now.